Hey guys, I'm 𝗙𝗙𝗖𝗋 from eToro, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 reasons I believe it is time to buy Croc stock. So with that said, let's get on with the video. Number 1 is timing. Crocs began decades ago when 2 businessmen bought 400 foam shoes and took them to a boat show and sold out instantly. The foam shoes were comfortable, grippy, and waterproof, so they were perfect for the people that like to spend the weekends on their boats. They took over the media in the attention because the media was obsessed with the idea of people spending a lot of money on ugly shoes. However, a bit like Icarus, they perhaps flew a bit too close to the sun and began designing other shoes that didn't suit their core brand exactly, were more rip-offs of other people's shoes. These shoes had lower margins and no one wanted to buy them. Worse even, they started discounting their core product, the foam clog, which made the brand perception become cheap, and so people began not buying that either. Eventually, the company became burdened with huge pile of excess inventory for shoes that people did not want to buy. Then fast forward almost 2 decades later to the year 2017, and Crocs hire a new CEO, a man that is known for making people spend tons of money on things they don't need, most popularly known as Stanley thermoses. The new CEO helped Crocs refocus its brand around the foam clog that costs pennies to injection mold and make with almost no labor cost. The foam that is super cheap and feels yet really amazing and soft on your feet and somehow manages to last years. Crocs aren't just trending this time though. It's not just a fad, it's here to stay. I was traveling around Asia, I saw them in every country that I went to, and I also see them in hospitals, at the beach, at the airport. Everywhere I go, there are people wearing Crocs. They are a recognized cool brand now, which is why other brands from Coca-Cola to Pringles all want to be associated with them. Now, perhaps one of the single most attractive things about the stock is its margin. Crocs make insane margin on their products. Now, Nike is the biggest shoe brand on the planet, so they can charge an incredible markup on the cost of materials because they have the best brand and, in theory, the best technology. Nike have a margin of 40 to 50%. Now that is the gross margin. However, that is not the entire cost of the business. You also have an HR team, you have marketing teams and sales teams. So the next thing you want to look at is how much money they make after spending money on marketing and sales. And that comes to around 10%. This is very rough math, but essentially for every dollar they made, they spent 90p getting there. Which, by the way, guys, is really not bad in the grand scheme of things in the entirety of the stock market. However, when we look at Crocs, they are making upwards of 60% gross margin reliably annually. And this becomes even more impressive when you look at their net profit. In net profit, they are making upwards of 25%. It has declined a little bit recently. In the pandemic, the business was booming, but yeah, they are making 25% net margins. That is insane. Now, what this all means about the margin is that for every dollar that they earn, compared to other similar businesses, they have much more money to invest in growth. Growth is perhaps one of the main reasons to get excited about this business because since 2021, their revenue has tripled. And while most companies, when they triple their revenue, their operating margins and their net margins suffer, as I've already talked about, our margins are doing fantastic. The fact is, even if growth is not as high as we'd hoped at the beginning of the year, it's still incredible growth and we still have the best margins in the entire industry. And one of the things that I like to see is that I can imagine a company growing, and I can totally see Crocs growing its market share in Asia, reaching other countries, and even growing within the regions that it already exists in. And I can definitely see that with a bit of investment, HeyDudes could possibly do the same. Now, here is another big one, debt. Up until recently, we had a huge amount of debt because in 2021, we purchased a company called HeyDudes for $2 billion. Some say that $2 billion is too much for the HeyDudes business, but what I really want to say to these people is, shut up. At the time that we took on this debt, this $2 billion in order to purchase hey!Dudes, debt was really, really cheap, and it was a great time to do acquisitions. Because if you think about it, if you have $2 billion at 5% interest, that is around $100 million a year. But if you have $2 billion at 10% interest, that's $200 million a year. So it's a huge amount more in interest for a small percentage difference. And therefore, it doesn't really matter how much the actual figure is. What matters is how much interest you are paying on that figure. And Crocs will have been paying so little interest on the money borrowed to purchase hey!Dudes. And if you had any concerns about this in 2021 and 22, those concerns should be pretty much gone by now, because we have paid off so much of this debt. We had a leverage of 3 when we purchased hey!Dude, which is pretty large, and now that has gone down to a net leverage of 1. We have 1.4 billion total left of net debt, and even though that is a large number relative to the 180 million that we have in cash, we made 800 million last year, 850 million in net profit. Net profit after paying off interest payments. That means our net profit was over half the entirety of our long-term debt. So really, we have nothing to worry about debt-wise. In fact, we had so much cash left over after paying down interest payments and paying off principal debt that over the last 5 years, we have bought back 15% of the outstanding shares. Okay, so now it is time to talk about price or value of the business, and for me, this is where things get really crazy. I'm going to be comparing Crocs to Nike. Recently, in the last 3 years, Nike's share price has declined around 60%. That is insane. They would need to grow by 300% from their current share price in order to get back to their previous all-time highs in 2021. It could easily be worthwhile doing a video on Nike right now just because of how cheap the stock is relative to its historical levels. But today I'm just going to be going over some of the headline statistics in order to compare it to the value of Crocs. Now, to begin with, Nike have a market cap of $115 billion. And for this $115 billion, you get about $5 billion in net income. Now, we're using net income for this quick analogy. We could easily use free cash flow, but in this instance, the free cash flow for both of these is not very different from net income. And when I can, I do prefer to use net income generally. The net income of Crocs is 800 million. So obviously, Nike is much bigger than Crocs. It is about 6 times bigger, so I just put a little times 6 there. Therefore, you would expect the market cap of Crocs to be 6 times smaller than the Nike price. And by the way, the price to earnings of Nike right now is 22. Historically, I mean, in the pandemic, it was like 50, 60. It's a really, really big brand, so they deserve quite a high PE ratio, I'd say. And so 22 is incredibly low for Nike historically. And so, yeah, you'd expect the market cap of Crocs, you'd expect it to be 1/6 of the market capitalization of Nike, which would be 20 billion. But in reality, the truth is the market capitalization of Crocs is $6 billion. That is crazy. Now, in my last video, I did something similar to this. I used the market capitalization and free cash flow, and quite a few of you said that I should be using the TEV. When you use the TEV, the total equity value, this figure comes to about 8 billion, which is still crazy low, and this one comes to about $118 billion. And so because that doesn't change very much, I'm just not going to be using the TEV for this video, just because I want to keep it really, really simple. The other point I would make is that Crocs are a powerhouse of a brand now. There are people I know that used to say they would never own a pair of Crocs that are now considering buying them. And the people that have been adamant not going to use it and have ended up with a pair of Crocs very quickly love them and use them all the time and will just forever continuously have a pair. However, if you're a retail investor and you're thinking about buying Crocs, the thing that you absolutely need to do is